We live in a tension epidemic, and it is probable this cultural malady is apparent in your personal life. Across the nation, stress is reaching into the lives of the young and old alike. Attempts to cope with stressful conditions associated with contemporary life are varied. While some individuals actively seek meaningful solutions to life's ongoing challenges, many grasp for one or another pill or artificial means to console their ailing bodies. This nationwide process of sedation has become a way of life for many, a life that is all too often devoid of energy, enthusiasm, alertness, and a desire for self-help. Along with this tendency to look outside of ourselves and into chemicals for assistance and relief are the many symptoms of stress and strain associated with unmanaged tension. Heart disease, hypertension, sleep disorders, ulcers, low back pain, and other similar concerns are frequent results of personal lifestyles dominated by stress and tension. Millions of dollars are spent each year in the diagnosis and treatment of these common ailments. Prevention of health problems is clearly possible when physical symptoms are known to follow from stress and tension. Preventive approaches to health problems are possible when individuals take time to educate themselves as to what they can do to ward off and to resolve circumstances leading to the occurrence of various maladies. Education, along with self-discipline and appreciation for our own well-being, all prepare individuals to take good care of themselves. Tension management and relaxation therapy are useful approaches to the effective handling of stress and tension. If you are willing to allot some time to care for yourself, it is likely you can make some significant changes in your daily life. Individuals and families can help themselves and each other when an attitude of personal effectiveness and cooperation prevails. Throughout the text, I refer to the concept of learning to live in the eye of the storm. Amidst the cyclonic violence of a hurricane, there is peace, quiet, and an overall sense of calm. I believe it is possible for the greatest percentage of people to find serenity in their everyday lives, even though we live in an era where tension and pressure are household terms. The emotional state of tension is indisputably common, and it is the rare individual indeed who can claim his fair share of rest, relaxation, and peace. A rare event is to discover an individual whose style of life is such that he can anticipate happiness on a fairly regular basis. I do believe that the principles and practices contained in the tension management program can contribute significantly to your personal happiness and contentment if you are willing to take some time out to care for your own physical and emotional well-being. Before we can fully appreciate the value of relaxation, happiness, and creativity, and before we can integrate these processes with the overall concept of living in the eye of the storm, I believe it is useful to identify some of the more obvious but nevertheless tragic symptoms of living in a stressful environment. As we become more acquainted with the intimate relationship that exists between man and his environment, so do we become more knowledgeable as to how we as individuals may be alert to the danger signals of a culture already overburdened and weary of tension. Only then can we successfully manage ourselves in a fashion that is conducive to happier and more creative lifestyles. One of the many disturbing aspects of our modern environment is the element of noise pollution, that harsh clamor of discordant sounds that seems to emerge from every corner of our lives. We are all familiar with the endless chatter of the television, ringing telephones, barking dogs, slamming doors, screeching tires, honking horns, sirens, loud music, and other sorts of uncoordinated sounds. I wonder how many of us are tuned into the systems of sound that soothe or bombard us on a minute-by-minute basis. I wonder further whether we are aware of the fact that we can alter our environments and thus our feelings by monitoring or regulating sounds. Consider the home, a place that is meant to be a place of peace and balance, and then consider whether you have given much thought to how sounds throughout the house affect your interactions with other family members. Tension, the feeling resulting from the stretching and straining of ourselves and each other, is very much a byproduct of the sound systems we live in. Another major environmental stress factor that serves to characterize our modern world, and a factor which augments tension in our lives, is interpersonal crowding. The increase in the total population, along with the trend of movement from rural to urban areas, has done much to alter the face of everyday life. Density of population, or overcrowding, has generated a number of life hazards that complicate and disrupt daily routines. Freeway traffic is not only noisy, but also frightening to many. Commuting is now an accepted aggravation and an accepted condition of living for many of us. Attendant with commuting are automotive expenses, accidents, traffic jams, new and used car commercials, and too many cars for too many people. These and various other problems associated with density of population add to the confusion and stress of work days and weekends. Density of population is a stress factor that cannot be ignored when attempting to understand ourselves in relation to our environment. Overcrowding is one thing, and the need for personal space is quite another. Personal space refers to an undefined area surrounding an individual bordered by invisible boundaries. It is that amount of space necessary to provide each and every person with a place where he is not crowded and where he does not feel invaded. The amount of personal space and the amount of time required in that space varies from individual to individual. It is a fact of life, however, that we all require some measure of personal space, and that without it we become agitated and our lives become increasingly void of meaning and ridden with annoyance and tension. Realizing our need for a quiet place is the beginning of our recognition of the need to learn to live within the eye of the storm. A person's quiet place may be situated in a den, workshop, the yard, bedroom, or any place where a feeling of pleasant solitude is available on a fairly predictable basis. Those families whose parents' bedroom is no longer a retreat, but only a pathway for children and neighbors, should listen carefully, because your home is losing its balance. In the absence of some constructive retreat, we are denied that important time with ourselves. Some privacy, personal space, freedom to do as one pleases, and release from external demands are prerequisites for personal balance and a relaxed way of living. Following in the footsteps of personal space is that most important parameter of life called time. We are behind time, ahead of time, racing with time, working against time, looking for time, but always aware of the passage of time. Can you imagine awakening to an early morning sunrise in an environment in which there are no days, weeks, months, or years? What would you do in that kind of a world? How would you know what to do and when to do it? These are thoughts worth reflecting on, if for no other reason than this reflection helps us understand how pressured and regimented modern life is as a function of time. We have developed a system of time because such a system was and is necessary in a complicated and interconnected world. It is unfortunate, however, that so many of us have not learned how to cope with time and time pressures. The stress of having to meet deadlines of whatever sort is no less familiar to the average housewife than to the corporate executive. For various reasons, we have not learned how to pace ourselves in relation to the amount of things we want to do. The inability to say no, the accumulated responsibilities of having said yes too often, being too nice to too many people, and the effects of not being nice to yourself, all contribute to the tensions of everyday life. If only I had more time, what else would I try to do? These are only some of the environmental stress factors referred to and evaluated in your text on tension management and relaxation. By educating yourself to the effects of environmental factors like noise pollution and overcrowding, you become more sensitive to sources of tension. Identifying environmental stress is essential to the understanding and management of tension. Becoming an architect of your home environment involves the management of that environment so an agreeable and harmonious social interplay of individuals is more likely. Respecting individuality and the need for personal space reduces tension in the home no less than does the reduction of disruptive noises and other conditions of disharmony. Creating a state of equilibrium within family life facilitates greatly the physical, mental, and emotional health of all. It is useful to identify environmental conditions that add to personal difficulties associated with troublesome and pressured lives. Awareness of the environment and its effects upon us relates directly to our ability to cope effectively with ourselves and with one another. It is equally important that we have some specific ideas how environmental stresses actually affect health and personal happiness. Education and awareness serve our capacity for self-help and for increased control of our personal destiny. There are many physical ailments that can be prevented if you will take time to educate yourself as to what can be done to facilitate better health. It should be mentioned, however, that tension management is primarily a preventive approach in that it is through the effective and continued managing of tension that you can avoid and/or ward off many significant health hazards. Once a particular medical disorder has become apparent, medical help should be sought immediately. Prior to the onset of a medical disorder, it behooves you to do what you can to arrange your life to maintain good health. It is common knowledge that heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States. What is not common knowledge is that you can significantly reduce the probability of falling victim to heart disease by taking precautions of a social psychological nature. Coming to grips with one's sense of time urgency, learning how to seek quality rather than quantity of achievements, learning how to play in search of fun and relaxation, and generally learning to relax without guilt, all contribute to lowered probabilities of heart disease. Hypertension or high blood pressure is a vascular disorder generally believed to be an important antecedent condition for coronary artery and heart disease. It is a direct medical concern of about 23 million Americans. Most provocative is the fact that the basis for about 90% of all cases of hypertension cannot be accounted for by physical explanations. This fact is significant since hypertension is a condition prevalent in individuals who live and work under conditions of excessive stress and related tension. Decreasing the likelihood of hypertension is viewed here in relation to how people have come to live their lives, how they have learned to cope with environmental pressures and personal conflicts, and how they have managed to reduce and limit the building up of chronically unrelieved tension. Heart disease, high blood pressure, and ulcers are frequent topics of conversation among those individuals who live in pressured and high-drive environments. How often have you heard someone refer to tension, worrying, and tranquilizers when discussing his stomach and the possibility of an ulcer? A recent advertisement for a medicine intended for the medical treatment of gastric ulcers asserted that the value of tranquilizers to the ulcer patient resides in their helping the patient relax and become less tense. It is a natural reflex for pharmaceutically minded people to recommend sedatives and other chemicals for ailments that can be relieved through natural means. In your text on tension management, you will review how tension and relaxation also interface with such personal concerns as migraine and tension headaches and sleep disorders. On the other side of this tape, you will find a discussion of relaxation therapy and then how relaxation therapy serves as a cornerstone for tension management.